Stigmatization around mental health still exists. In the last several years, there's been an uptick in shared treatment experiences, specifically for those who were in treatment as an adolescent over the last 30 years. As a consultant working with young adults only, it's been unsettling to hear about the horrific experiences that some folks have described. As someone trained as a counselor, we were taught to do no harm. I lead with this for each client I work with. While recording this special parent series, over the last year, several parents have suggested I interview their young adults. The special parent series is noted as being just that. It's about the parent perspective only. I'm now branching out to launch the former participant series, extending the opportunity for former participants who feel comfortable talking about their journey, doing so on this podcast. No topic is off limits, and not all stories are positive. This series is meant to be honest, transparent, and real for each individual's experience through the treatment continuum. Please note that this special former participant series is the adult's perspective of their treatment experience during adolescence or as a young adult. This is merely one perspective of a single story, and it's important to know that names have been changed for the protection of the interviewee unless they have requested not to do so. These episodes may include details surrounding suicide, self-harm, substance abuse, including overdose, hospitalizations, psychotic episodes, and other traumatic experiences which include parts of the treatment journey. That includes working with consultants, being escorted by a transport company, wilderness therapy, and a residential treatment program. All that is to say, listener discretion is advised. Welcome to an episode with a former participant in treatment.
It's time now for the Success is Subjective podcast. Here is your host and therapeutic consultant for young adults only, Joanna Lilley.
Hi, and welcome to the show. Today, my guest, who is a former program participant, is Patrick Devlin. Patrick is a licensed clinical social worker, so an LCSW, a level 2 drug and alcohol counselor, so KDAC2, and a boards-approved supervisor in the state of Oregon. He has been working in the treatment field since 2008 and has worked in a number of treatment settings, including wilderness therapy, the nonprofit sector, private practice, aftercare programs, and mental health and addiction treatment. He is a co-founder of Skyline Recovery and Broken Top Counseling in Bend, Oregon, and currently serves as the clinical director at Skyline, where he specializes in working with trauma and addiction. Let's get to the interview now with Patrick on today's edition of Success is Subjective. Well, Patrick, it's good to see you.
It's good to see you too. It's been a minute.
It has been a minute. Thank you. We were literally just talking offline when the Success is Subjective. It wasn't even a podcast. It was initially created as a video series that actually started in November of 2018, actually at the IECA conference in Atlanta. But quickly I realized that that was not a format in which was sustainable, and ironically, I had no idea that we were going to roll into less than a year later, really looking at, or maybe it was 2019. I don't remember. Not long after, we're now in the pandemic time, and that was like, oh gosh, there's no way I would have been able to have maintained what we were doing. So had switched to podcast, which I'm glad to have you back because this is a different. Well, it's just been years, but now we're diving into more specifically some different questions. So I know you're busy. I just appreciate you being willing to come back and do this. This is like part 2.
Part 2. Let's do it. Yeah. No, it's funny thinking back on that in the, some conference room in the Atlanta hotel. And I remember I got sick mid conference that we were at, and so I was limping through that one, but we did it. We got it done. We did it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it was awesome to do that, and I learned quite quickly this is gonna be impossible for me to get people to do this. And so anyways, let's dive in. I know a little bit of your backstory also because we have inside jokes about Texas.
Yeah, we
so
do.
Tell us more specifically, for the audience that doesn't know your story, where did you actually grow up? How old were you when you went to treatment? And then really what was going on, kind of giving that wrap around, what was going on in your life that even led to the intervention that was you going or needing to go to treatment?
Sure. Well, Texas forever, just to start us off there. One of our Texas inside jokes. So yeah, I was born in Dallas and raised in the Dallas Fort Worth area, and I was 19, I think, when I first started going to treatment, and then I was 20 when I got sober. So it took me a few tries, but less time than others, more than some. So, and as far as what was leading up to that, I think that in terms of the podcast version of the story, that what I can say is that, and this is, as we tell our stories over time, we're able to, it's part of our healing process, and it's part of the perspective that we get as we do more work on ourselves, as we can see our past more clearly. And for me today, at 37 years old, and having 17 years of sobriety in like 2 weeks from now, so it's kind of cool actually getting to tell this story like around one of my sobriety anniversary, is that I know for me growing up in my childhood, I came from an alcoholic home where there was other forms of dysfunction and things like that was going on. And I was one of these people that grew up in more of like a suburban kind of environment. And I think that on the surface, my family kind of looked like it had their things together, and like my parents were together. And even though there was alcoholism in the home, we weren't like the shit show family where it was like fights out in the street and stuff like that. It was a lot of tension, dysfunction, anxiety that I was internalizing a lot when I was younger, and I really just didn't have words for it. And so I was somebody who would struggle through school, mostly behaviorally. Like I remember when I was young, one of my teachers said something like to my parents, were like, he's very nice and he's very smart, but he just won't stop talking and kind of getting into trouble and stuff. And when I look back now, I see that there's like part of like this unmet needs that were going on. So anyways, that was kind of the context. And then what happened is I started to go through high school, and I really was one of these guys that kind of just climbed the ladder of different types of substance use. So it started out with like smoking cigarettes when I was in middle school, and then like occasionally, drinking but not getting drunk. And then it was like smoking weed and then drinking and then psychedelics. And then really by the time I hit around my junior year of high school, I think at that point I had tried like cocaine and meth and harder opiates, prescription opiates, different psychedelics. And then I started to have the consequence start to mount more and more. And I got to this point where I had like a pretty serious overdose on some prescription pills, kind of got my shit together for a little bit. And what I actually had kind of learned is that, if I just hide things from people, I just got better at hiding things, which eventually led to me going to college at the University of Arizona for about 1.5 years, which, side note, if you have a budding drug addiction, don't go to school there probably. Actually, today you probably could now because they have a collegiate recovery program. But
they do.
And yeah, in 2005 when I went there, and I know there's an amazing program that's based out of Tucson too that could help you out. But in 2005, that stuff was not there. It was more like, it was just, frats. And I was going to Mexico and like a lot of things that I don't recommend doing that. Yeah. That's a story for another day. Some of the Mexico trips. Actually, I'll just say quickly that on my college visit to Tucson to go see if I wanted to go to school there, I went to Mexico and got arrested in Mexico for trying to buy cocaine. And somehow got bailed out at the last second. It's kind of a crazier story than just that, but that's like the Cliff Notes version. And somehow I still decided to go to school there, which was like the kind of like crazy part of it all. But so I was there, and around that time I started to use harder drugs. I started to get into heroin, and then I think when I was 18, I tried, I used a needle for the first time, and I was one of these people that could kind of like keep up appearances. I think I'd learned that from my family, is like how to put up a facade. And so I was still getting good grades. I think my freshman year, I had like a 3.9 GPA or something like that, but then was just, going to Mexico, doing a ton of hard drugs, things like that. And then eventually the wheel started to fall off. My sophomore year, I went in, and then when I was 19, I just couldn't keep up with it anymore. I started having even like emotional breakdowns, like these moments where I was like, I can't keep doing this, trying to reach out for help. And and then I would quickly kind of like walk it back. And then that led to me, I think the first time that I actually went to treatment, was at a place called, should I say the name?
It's totally up to you.
Yeah. It's called Sundown Ranch. I don't know if it's still there or not, but it's in East Texas. It's called, outside of Canton, Texas.
I don't actually know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It was like an old dude ranch where you'd like, it had like the fake storefronts and saloon, like swinging doors and stuff. And it'd be like, okay, at 12:30, we're going in for relapse prevention skills into the old saloon kind of thing. And, it was an interesting place. They also had goats there that were fainting goats. And so they were right by where people smoked cigarettes. So we'd go out there and people would just like yell and the goats would faint. And it was like, yeah, it wasn't great. But so I went there, and I went there fresh off of an overdose, of heroin overdose. And so I had this kind of run where I think I was doing outpatient treatment at the time prior to going to Sundown Ranch. And I had kind of figured out how to get around this like drug testing system that they were doing. And so everybody in my life actually thought that I was doing well. And I remember it was actually my parents, like, I think it was like their 25th wedding anniversary, which is like not great. It was their 25th wedding anniversary. I'd like done this drug test, and I had been using like all the time and all weekend leading up to it. And they were going to go to dinner, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go to a meeting. And I went and I overdosed on heroin. And so, they got the phone call, and they showed up to seeing me on a ventilator in the ICU. And I ended up being there for 3 or 4 days. And they were the ones who recommended this Sundown Ranch place. And that was one of the first points where I was like really very willing, but it's still like one of these things about treatment. And I think when I work with families today is that sometimes that different stages of the treatment process of where a person is can be about sometimes planting seeds, sometimes recognizing of where a person is in their process of change. And even though I had gone through a lot of really intense stuff to that point and had just overdosed, I kind of wasn't done. And so I had that treatment experience, and then I got out and I relapsed the next day. And then I was in this period of time for maybe like 2 months where I was living in a halfway house. I was hiding it and all this kind of stuff. And then everything came to a head on July 2nd, 2007. And that was when I actually was kind of like court ordered into treatment. It was basically like court threatened. I had just like, I showed up to detox when they were going to pull me in there. I proceeded to like assault somebody in the parking lot. I locked myself in my mom's car and just snorted heroin in front of her and my sister and the other staff there, and smoked a cigarette in the car. And then I begrudgingly went inside, and they were like, so if you leave right now, we're going to press charges on you for the assault that you just did. And, or you can stay and we'll give you something that'll help you sleep tonight. And then you're just going to have to kind of go through it. And so I, was at this point where it wasn't like this profound, like I see the light and I'm going to do it now. It was like a kind of like collapse. It was like, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep fighting anymore. And that was kind of like the seed really starting to take root for me in my recovery. And fortunately, I was able to get connected to a really great place. I went to a wilderness program in Utah that was called Second Nature Entrada. It's now called Evoke Entrada. And they had a therapist there that I worked with whose name is Beth Fogel, who really was amazing. And she's like a real maverick of a person. And she was like the perfect person for me at the time. And so I was there for like 3+ months, maybe, a little over 3 months. And then I went to this program that's not there anymore that was in Washington State, which was called Life Designs. And it was basically just like a working ranch. We worked 5 days a week, and there was like llamas and chickens and goats and different projects we would do. We'd like cut down firewood and stuff. We'd go to Spokane, which was 2 hours away, 1 day a week, where we would go to Costco to shop for ourselves. We'd go to one AA meeting, which I almost saw like a fist fight in that meeting one time, which was kind of a cool thing. And so I was there for like 5 months, and that place was important for me. Like I think the first time that I went to treatment, when I went to Sundown Ranch, and they were like, so what are you going to do for aftercare? And I was like, this isn't just a one-stop shop. Like the aftercare, like I did not sign up for this thing. Part of that for me at the time, most of what scared me about aftercare is like, I wasn't that ready either. And so, and for me at that time as well, there weren't a lot of really great aftercare programs out there. I just went to this halfway house that was in Dallas. And yeah, there was like no therapeutic component by any means. There was very little like structure, oversight, accountability, community, any of that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, it was important for me to go to Life Designs, even though it was kind of this, yeah, I would say that like when looking at it now, because part of like my journey since getting into recovery and working in treatment is that I specialize in working with trauma and addiction, and I'm a big therapy nerd. And when I look back on like how the kind of clinical model over there, it's kind of funny. I don't know how to say it differently. It's like it's just kind of more old school. It's a little more old school, but it was like they had a lot of heart there. The staff were great, and it was like perfect for me. And I think especially like getting to just have a simple life and like be working on a ranch and stuff like that was really helpful for me. So yeah, I did that. And yeah, I think that kind of answers the question. Actually, I realized your question was what led to treatment. So I just went like 8 months past it. So yeah.
Well, you went all the way clear through to the entire like treatment continuum. But I think that you also kind of started to plant some seeds about what it is that you're doing now. So let's fill the gaps. You know, like you're 8+ months into a treatment continuum. At some point you go back to school, you get your degree, and it does lead to the work that you're doing now. Give us kind of some of the highlights of like, how did you end up weaving your way to what it is that you're doing now? And then tell us what it is that you're doing now.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, for me, it's funny. I look back now on those of us that, and part of it is that I actually, with one of my other co-founders of Skyline Recovery, which I'll get to in a second, we're doing this course right now that we're offering for people that's really super fun, and it's been really a really cool thing that we're doing. And I also like supervising a handful of folks right now, and often are talking about like, what is it that brings us to this work? Like those of us who work in this field. And it's kind of interesting. I think some people are just like, oh, well, I just, you know, really like to help people. A lot of times it's deeper than that. And it's like, and there's kind of a template and stuff. And so even when I look back now, I'm like, wow, it's really interesting that this just, my life has kind of gone this way. But I think that the thing that steered me towards wanting to do this work was that I went to this wilderness program. And for me, something that was really helpful was that when I went to that first treatment center, I still felt like I was kind of in the same soup, so to speak, that I was using in. It was like an 1.5 hour drive from where I grew up and from where I was using drugs and really struggling a lot. And, you know, I was still, I don't know, wearing the same clothes. Like there was something about it that just felt like very similar. It felt hard to access change. And there was something for me that felt really transformative and helpful about when I went to that wilderness program, where I was like totally in a different environment. Like, and I wasn't like, we didn't camp that much when I was a kid. Like it was totally foreign to me. And I got out there, and at first I was like really outside of my comfort zone. And then it like started to become comfortable. I started to feel at home. I started to feel more connected to the other people out there, both the staff and the clients, than really many people in my whole, in my life to that point. And it was like the first time that specific type of model, because it's this group model where it's like 8 to 12 people that are in a group together. The ability you have to develop like emotional closeness, intimacy, honesty. I was so good at lying and hiding stuff that it was like the first time where it was like I was confronted about stuff and that I couldn't kind of squirm out of. And the cool thing is like I was confronted a lot in the beginning, and then like the people still wanted to be around me, and they still loved me, and they still cared about me. And I could really feel that. And it was like the first time that I felt like I was really could be myself and still be loved, which again was a thing I didn't know that I needed because it was missing. So giving that context, like that really was like why I think I started working in this field. So I had that experience, and the first month or so was really hard for me. And when I was in that wilderness program, and then it started to become great, and I really felt good and comfortable out there. And so when I left, I had this feeling where I was like, I want to keep doing that. I want to keep being out there, and how can I do that? And then so I think my therapist at the time said, like, I don't know what you want to do longer term, but if you wanted to do this kind of work, you could. Like you seem to have kind of like a heart for it and a mind for it and stuff. And that was like one of the first times that somebody I feel like had really actually like seen me in a way that felt really cool too. Because before it was just like, I'm going to get a business degree and I'm whatever. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. And so I left there with this desire to want to go back. And then I went to this ranch and so I knew that I had like certain steps. The first one was like, okay, how long do I have to be sober until I can get a job to work in this field? And so people were telling me usually like 1 year, maybe 2 years. And so I was leaving that place. And I think I had like maybe 8 or 9 months of sobriety. And that was in Washington. And I'd never been to Oregon before, which is where I live now. But I kept hearing about like Bend, Oregon. And then somebody said that there was like a wilderness program that was there that was actually connected to the same program that I went to. So it was called Second Nature Entrada in Utah. And then there was Second Nature Cascades in Oregon. And so I was like, I could maybe move there. Never been there before. Didn't know anybody there. And I think I sent an email and was like, hey, are y'all hiring? Like I went through the program in Utah. And luckily at the time, there weren't a lot of people that were like in recovery working at that program. And so none of them really like asked if I was in recovery or cared. And long story short, I moved to Bend without having a job there. And I was like, I'll just get a job at like Starbucks or something until, they're hiring. Moved there. I went to a young people's AA meeting that night and met somebody who ended up being a longtime friend who he worked there, and he was like, hey, I think they're hiring right now. And so I went home and I checked my email, and they emailed me literally the day I moved there. And they were like, hey, can you come out for this orientation? So they started letting me work there when I had like 9 months sober, which like maybe they shouldn't have done, but it worked out. And so I started working there. And I think that I had gone through maybe a year of working there and just like, getting experience mostly working with adolescents, actually entirely with adolescents, mostly adolescent boys. And then after a year of doing that, I was like, okay, I need to figure out how to get my degree. And this was in 2008. And so there was a school called Prescott College, which is in Arizona. And they had like one of the OG distance programs. And so they let me do this thing because I had like 2 years of school under my belt where I got to like kind of create my own degree in psychology using credit from like working in the wilderness program and this whole thing. So I did that with them where I was pretty busy for a number of years. It was like I was working full time in the wilderness. I'd do a week on, week off schedule. My off week, I was like a full-time college student, like writing papers and doing all that kind of stuff. And then, and so I did that for maybe like a solid year and was able to like get all my credits dialed in. And then, right as I was like maybe 6 months from graduating in Bend here, they have a master's in social work program that only opens up once every 3 years. It's like a cohort model. And so my plan was that I was just going to take like a year off from school before considering grad school or something, but they only opened up once every 3 years. And I really wanted to get a master's in social work as opposed to a master's in counseling. And so I was like, so it lined up so I'd be able to get in right after I finished my degree. Literally, there'd be a month in between or something. So I applied, got into that, and just continued the school grind. And then at that point, I had an opportunity to actually stay with the wilderness program, and I decided to go and get experience somewhere else with a different population. So I worked with adults with severe and persistent mental illness at a secure facility here in Bend. And these are folks that are considered criminally insane, I guess is like the kind of pejorative way to say it. And it was actually like great experience and I really enjoyed working with those people. And I feel like it actually like gave me this whole other facet to like things like diagnoses and different types of interventions, different levels of care and stuff. And so I was there for a year and a half. And then, and I still would do some work for the wilderness program sometimes. And then I was also working a little bit at a nonprofit too with adults with developmental disabilities. And then from there, I was finishing up school and had to do like a final internship. And I was like, I've never worked with young adults before. At this point, I've worked with like older adults. I've worked with developmental disabilities. I've worked with adolescents, addiction and stuff. And so I'd heard about this program that was called Dragonfly in Southern Oregon. And I knew that one of the co-founders, Mona Treadway, who's both Mona and Glenn have been real mentors to me and very, great people to me in my career, that I knew that she was an MSW and a licensed clinical social worker. And so she could supervise me if I went down there and did an internship. So I did an internship down there and was commuting. It was like a 2-hour drive to get down there and stuff. And so I did an internship there, and then I went and worked at Dragonfly for 5 years, a little under 5 years. I was the program director and a therapist, and then helped start up the Ashland campus in Ashland, Oregon, which was really cool experience to help with like the experience of starting something, even though it was like, an established program and all this kind of stuff, but just starting up a new location. And then, I think probably around 2016, 17, I started like thinking more about like, what it is that I want to do long-term. And I started connecting with my two other co-founders of Skyline Recovery. And part of it, which is kind of a funny story, is that one of the ways that I got connected with them is that, so Brennan, one of my other co-founders who we're doing the mastermind course with, he was doing outreach for a program called The Refuge in Florida, and he came and toured Dragonfly. And when he came to tour, we just like hit it off, and we're just like immediately had like a bunch of like jokes and banter and things like that going on. And he was married at the time, and I was in like a 7-year relationship. And then we both went through breakups within like 3 months of each other. And he was living in Portland and I was living like 4 hours away. And so we would just talk on the phone like 4 or 5 nights a week for like an hour at a time, like just kind of our own therapy sessions for each other. And we just got super close. And then it was like through that support and those discussions that we started talking about wanting to like start something of our own. And that's really where this idea of Skyline Recovery started to come in. So we talked about wanting to have a model that was different than a lot of what we saw, this kind of missing lane that was out there where you'd have these like very bare bones sober living programs that had very little therapeutic or clinical support and were just maybe like heavy 12-step emphasis. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you would have these like really expensive, super structured aftercare programs. And that there was like this missing lane in between like having autonomy, independence, freedom, having guys be able to go and like live life and have experiences, but have really good integrated therapeutic support and really good, just like trauma informed care and all that kind of stuff. So through that, we just started very bare bones. We just pulled the little money that we had together through, like I cashed in my 401k and like one of our other co-founders, Dustin, like took out a loan, and we just pulled our money together and got a mortgage on a house that we told them that we were actually going to live in, but we because we could get a first time home buyer like home loan. And, but then it was actually, that's where our clients were living and stuff. And then we had, Brennan and I both had therapy offices in downtown Bend, and those were our initial offices. And so that was 6 years ago, just on the 18th of June. So I know we're recording this on the 21st. Yeah. So it's been a wild ride. It's been, a really beautiful process to be a part of. And so now when we started, we had like I think it was a 6-bed house, and we just had our offices downtown, and it was just 3 of us. And now we have, I think, like 10 or 12 employees, and we have 19 beds. And we just moved into this new office building in this really cool part of town. And I think the thing that I'm like most excited about and love, though, is just our alumni community. We have such a cool and strong alumni community here in Bend. Yeah. So that's a little more of the filling in the blank to now.
Well, and this is, so for anybody listening, we'll make sure that we have links in the show notes so you can learn about not just Skyline Recovery and who could be potentially a good fit, but also we'll send a link too for the masterclass, Patrick. So for anybody that's interested, and if you guys have this ongoing, then that's something that people can also tag into. But just for the sake of time, I'm going to ask you one last question to close out. And I asked you this before. I mean, this was literally like, 6 years ago, it feels like. Do you see, like, having heard your story from where you were before to where you are now, do you see yourself as successful?
Yeah. It's cool hearing that question or being asked that question, like 6 years later after that. And so the answer is yes. The first thing I think of, though, is I have a almost 4-year-old daughter. She'll be 4 next month. Her name's Rose, and she's the best. And that was like the first thing I thought of, though, when I think about like that question of like, am I successful? And I don't know, maybe this sounds, I don't know how this sounds, and it doesn't really matter. But like this morning, I got up, I woke her up and like made her breakfast, and I took her to her like little Montessori school thing she goes to. And I just think about like the connection between us, and that I feel like I'm able to, yes, the stuff with Skyline is amazing. I feel proud of that. I feel like I love the work that I get to do with the guys there. And I feel like we're doing really great work, and I feel really proud of that. And our team, we had a family workshop yesterday with some that I was facilitating that went really well. And I feel like that was successful, and those things are. But I think this, the family that I have and this kind of balance and the things that come is a gift of recovery, both in being able to help people for sure, but it's also some of these things about how do I show up to these relationships, like these personal relationships, and how do I show up as a father and as a man. So I think, that's what comes to mind more, but yeah, cool to reflect on it 6 years later though. So I appreciate the question.
Yep. And if I, honestly, a part of me wants to go back to the video and be like, let's compare them side by side with what you responded, because clearly you didn't have Rose at that point. So obviously your response was different. But Patrick, thank you again. I know you're super busy. I respect your time personally and professionally. And so I just really appreciate you coming on, being a guest again, and sharing your story for this former participant special series. So thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Joanna. Great to be here.
That's it for this week's Success is Subjective episode. We want to thank our guest for joining Joanna on the show this week and for being willing to share your journey. This podcast would not exist if it weren't for people such as yourself. Stay tuned for our next episode, where you can bet it'll be another amazing human sharing their personal story with the world. Make sure you check out the show notes, where you will find contact information, website details, and all social media for our guest. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, you can email joanna@lilleyconsulting.com. Be sure to check out the lilleyconsulting.com website for additional resources outside of podcasting. Now, if you're listening to the show on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe. And while you're at it, feel free to leave a review. You can also download to listen to the Success is Subjective podcast on other popular podcast apps, such as Audible, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn Radio. Thanks again for listening in, and remember, there is no single path through life. Success is what you make it.
Do you have a teenager or young adult who seems to have lost their way? Maybe they need help navigating adolescence, adulthood, and decisions surrounding higher education. Or maybe they have become withdrawn, their grades are slipping, or they are flat out living a reckless lifestyle, and you're concerned about their health and well-being. If this describes what your teen or young adult is facing, a therapeutic consultant may be able to help. Mental health, addiction recovery, and higher education can all be equally expensive. While information is everywhere, how do you know what option is the best one for your family? Some parents have the time to research and navigate this on their own. Some don't. If the latter applies to you, enter therapeutic consultants. Therapeutic consultants, like Joanna, listen to your family's specific needs and advocate on behalf of your loved one. TCs will research therapeutic resources, recommend treatment programs, and assist during adulthood transitions. Not being affiliated with any program, their support is completely objective and catered toward the best interest of each unique family. To find a qualified therapeutic consultant to work with, check out TCA, also known as the Therapeutic Consulting Association. Their website is therapeuticconsulting.org, all one word. Again, that's therapeuticconsulting.org. Then click the Find a Pro tab up at the top.